All right, so for today's lesson, I'm actually just going to go over the homework, but I'm going to record it this time because this lesson that we just did on Friday is actually really crucial for the lesson that's going to come um, for the rest of the week. So that's why I really want to take the time and make sure that you guys understand this one before we move on to the next one. All right, so the first problem, you had this right triangle here. There's a 30-degree angle, so it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle, and we're trying to find the missing side length. We're trying to solve for what x is. So the first step, step one, is to figure out whether you're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. So remember from the lesson, in order to figure that out, you need to label it. So across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse, so I'll label that. And across from the angle that you're given, so across from the 30 is your opposite side. And whatever's left is the adjacent, the one that's next to the given angle. And then you look at these and say, all right, which one doesn't have anything? Well, the adjacent doesn't have any marks on it, so I'm just going to erase that. Don't need the adjacent side. And that's how you figure out which one it's going to be, because out of the three trig ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent, which one uses opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. So we're going to start with sine of, what was that? Sine of 30 degrees, since we had a 30-degree angle, is equal to, and then you set up your fraction, so opposite over hypotenuse would be x over 80. And then now we need to figure out what is the sine of 30 degrees. We need to figure out what that value is. So that's where you go back to those two triangles that I had you memorize. So I copied them over here. So let's go over these. So for the 30, 60, 90 triangle, I have it drawn here. And it's important to know which side lengths are across from which degree measures. It's the easiest way, I guess. So across from, so here's a 30-degree angle. And across from the 30-degree angle is a 1. And no matter how this triangle is going to be rotated or anything like that, it's always going to be across from the 30 is a 1. For a 30, any 30, 60, 90 triangle, across from the 60 is going to be the square root of 3. And across from the 90-degree angle, across from the right angle, is going to be the 2. So that's always going to be the same. Across from the 30 is 1, across from the 60 is square root of 3, across from 90 is 2. So then what do we need? Well, we need, on this triangle, we have a 30-degree angle and the 90. So just remember, across from the 30 is a 1 and across from the 90 is a 2. So that's what we're going to use. So across from the 30 is going to be a 1, and across from the 90-degree angle is going to be a 2. So we're going to use opposite over hypotenuse for those. So 1 over 2. And then bring down the x over 80. So notice how we substituted 1 over 2 because that is the actual value of sine of 30 degrees. And now once you have this equation set up, now you cross multiply. So multiply diagonally. So you cross multiply and then solve it. So 2 times x is 2x and 1 times 80 is 80. Then your last step is to solve it. So divide by 2 on both sides and you get x is equal to 40. And that's your answer. So that's the length of that missing side. For number 2, looks like we have a 45-degree angle. So this means it is similar to our 45, 45, 90. So let's go back and go over that one. So for all 45, 45, 90 triangles, they're all similar or related to this one. They're just larger. So across from the 45-degree angle is a 1. So then I'm going to write that. Or memorize that across from the 45 is a 1. And then actually the same thing holds true for this one. Across from this 45-degree angle is also a 1. So really it doesn't matter where the 45 is. Since they're both the same 45 degrees, they're both a 1. And then across from the 90 is the square root of 2. So that's what you need to memorize. Across from a 45 is a 1. Across from the 90 in this case is the square root of 2. All right. Now, before we go into those, let's set up our equation. So let's see. Let's figure out whether it's sine, cosine, or tangent. So across from the 90-degree angle is going to be the hypotenuse. Across from the 45, from the angle that's given, is going to be opposite. And the x is going to be adjacent because it's next to the 45. And then erase the one that doesn't have anything. So there's nothing on the opposite side, so I'll erase that. So it looks like we have adjacent and hypotenuse left, which I believe is cosine. So we're going to be using cosine of 45 degrees is equal to, and then you set up your fraction. So x over 100 square root 2. All right. So now let's figure out what is the value of cosine of 45. All right, well, if we go back to the triangle that I just went over, what should be across from the 90-degree angle, or across from the 90 should be the square root of 2. And then what should be across from the 45? So across from the 45 should be a 1. And then on the other side is also a 1. So both sides are 1. All right, and then we just set up so we figure out this value for cosine of 45. So adjacent over hypotenuse, so we're going to be doing, we don't need this 1 there really. So again, going adjacent over hypotenuse, so 1 over the square root of 2. Bring the other side down. And then you cross multiply and solve. So I'll multiply x times the square root of 2. So that just gives you can't actually multiply them together because one's in a root, the other one's not. So you just write them side by side. And then then you multiply 1 times 100 square root of 2. The 1 is going to multiply the 100, not the 2, because the 2 is in a root, so it doesn't get multiplied by the 1 since the 1's not in a root. And then the last step is to divide both sides. So I'm going to divide both sides by square root of 2, divide by square root of 2. So these will cancel out on the left, and it leaves you with just x. And then on the right side, again, square roots can only be divided by other square roots. So this square root of 2 is going to cancel out this square root of 2, just like we did on the left side. So then all you have left is just the 100, and there's your answer. All right, so the next one, number 3. So I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. I'll start with labeling it. Let's see, across from the 60 is going to be opposite. Across from the 90 is going to be hypotenuse. And the x is going to be adjacent since it's next to the 60. We don't need the opposite, or no, we don't need the hypotenuse this time since it doesn't have anything on there. So out of the 3 trig ratios, which one uses opposite and adjacent? That would be tangent. So we're going to do tangent of 60 degrees is equal to, and then you do opposite over adjacent, so 120 over x. Now we need to know the value of tangent of 60. So again, looking back at this triangle, what do we have here? We have opposite and adjacent, or the 60-degree angle. So across from the 60 should be square root of 3. And we don't need the hypotenuse, so we don't need the 90. We just need the 1. So again, across from the 60 is going to be the square root of 3. And we don't need the hypotenuse, so nothing here. And then this one's going to be a 1. So you just set up your opposite over adjacent for that one. So square root of 3 over 1 equals, let me write larger. Square root of 3 over 1 equals 120 over x. Then cross multiply and solve it. So 1 times 120 and square root of 3 times x. Again, you just write them side by side. You can't actually multiply them. Last step is to divide. So divide by square root of 3, they will cancel. On the left side, divide by square root of 3. And then this is where it becomes tricky, because now we have our answer in the form of a fraction. So let me move this over, because I can cheat like that. All right, so we have your answer is x equals 120 over the square root of 3, but your answer is never going to be a fraction with a root on the bottom, so you have to fix that. So from the video, multiply by square root of 3 on top and bottom. That way it'll get rid of it. So on the top, 120 times the square root of 3, you just leave it. On the bottom, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is going to be square root of 9. Then you simplify that from here. So square root of 9 on the bottom, you can do that. It's going to be 120 square root of 3. And the square root of 9 on the bottom is just going to be regular 3 without the root. And then from here, this 3 is going to divide the 120, since both of those are not inside the root. You do not divide the square root of 3 by 3, because one's in a root, one's not. So 120 divided by 3, final answer is 40 square root of 3. Final answer in simplified form. All right, so that's the first two were easy ones where your answer is just the answer and that's it. So this one was easy. Number 2 was easy because you didn't have to simplify that one either. Number 3 is one of the harder ones because you have to simplify your answer. And number 4 is actually going to end up being a harder one also, as you'll see when I work it out. So let's go through this one. Let's see. This one is across from the 60 or from the 90 is the hypotenuse, and the x is going to be next to the 45, so that one is adjacent. So which one uses adjacent and hypotenuse? That one's cosine. So cosine 45 is equal to, and then you set up your fraction, x over 66. And then now we need to know what is the value of cosine of 45. So you're going to do adjacent over hypotenuse for that. So let's figure that out. So remember, across from the 45 is a 1, and well, both legs are 1, and the hypotenuse is square root of 2. So we'll do that. So this is a 1, this is a 1, and the hypotenuse is square root of 2. So then we don't need this one because it doesn't have anything. We're not using that one, so we just need 1 over the square root of 2. And then x over 66. Let me move that over because I know I'm going to have to simplify that later. So cross multiply these. X times the square root of 2 is going to be just square root of 2x. And 1 times 66. I'm just messing all this up. Here, let me write so that I have more space. So square root of 2 times x is going to be square root 2x, and 1 times 66 is going to be 66. And the last step is going to be to divide both sides by square root of 2. So divide by square root of 2, divide by square root of 2. And then again, these will cancel because it's the same on the top and bottom. So your answer before you simplify is going to be x equals 66 over the square root of 2. But remember, you have to simplify these. You cannot just leave it how it is. Just multiply by whatever's on the bottom. So multiply by square root of 2, square root of 2 on the top also. Let's see, so 66 square root of 2 on the bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4. And square root of 4 simplifies to be just 2. And then the 2 is going to divide the 66 since they're both outside of a root. So your final answer is going to be x equals 33 square root of 2. How did that oval turn into a rectangle? Or how did that, you know what? We're just going to do that. All right. So there's a work for these. Your assignment for today is going to be so you'll go as if you were to submit the assignment like we always do, except this time it'll just be a text, like a place where you just type. And you can just message me if you had any questions, or if you don't have any questions and you get my work and you checked your work and you figured out what was wrong if you made any mistakes, then just write no questions or something like that, or I understood it, or I'm good. So again, today's assignment is, you've already watched the video. All you need to do for your homework is going to be to check your homework and just type if you have any questions.